King Charles today in the Times that we saw at the weekend. Memos fired off by the monarch to correct grammar and demand single flowers be moved, and wrecking morale among staff who are paid as little as minimum wage down at Highgrove. What's going on?
Well, it seems like gardeners have been revolting, if you read, looking through the lines of the article, because Highgrove is his home, has lived there for a long time, and he's passionate. From the King's perspective, the gardens is something that he has brought on and developed over the years to be quite a spectacular one. But it appears that, it's not saying it's recently, but sort of in 2022, 2023, there was trouble with the staff, saying they're not being paid properly. The turnover has been high of staff. There's been investigations that potentially people's mental health has been affected. So it's all, look, I don't know the exact details, but obviously this investigation has found that not everybody's been happy working for the king in his garden. But in the defence, they say we pay above the minimum wage. We have been consulting. Our turnover isn't as any more than anywhere else. It is an industry that does see people move very often between places of work if you're a gardener. So it's difficult to know exactly what is going on. There's obviously going to be two sides of the coin to this story, but obviously it's uncomfortable reading for the king to find that when he prides himself on being so good with his staff, that some aren't as happy as we perhaps thought they should be.
No. Well, it says that he's lost 11 of 12 gardening staff since 2022, including 2 head gardeners who quit within a year.
Well, that's not a good look. I mean, gardeners do move, as I say, regularly, but if he's putting unnecessary demands on them, shortage of staff, I think the king has acknowledged that there's an awful lot of work to be done there, and perhaps they haven't had as many people working there to make it via putting people under too much pressure with their workload. He's even asked for sort of volunteers who might want to come along and help out from the local area. So to ease the burden on as part of the King's Foundation, which this is, because the place gets around 40,000 visitors a year. So it is an attraction in the area just outside Tetbury in Gloucestershire. So obviously it's something that I'm sure the King will be looking at to make sure that this sort of story doesn't come out again.
King Charles's troubles don't seem to be ending anytime soon. And this time it's not about his wayward sons or palace protocols, it's about his beloved Highgrove estate. And the drama there doesn't seem to be going away. Picture this. Over the past 3 years, 11 out of 12 gardeners have quit Highgrove, including the head gardener and his deputy. That's not just staff turnover, folks, that's a full-scale exodus. These departing employees cited a laundry list of grievances relating to their royal employer that would make even the most demanding boss blush. Welcome back to Meghan and Harry Tales, where we dive deep into the royal drama that keeps on giving. I'm your host, Adrian. The Highgrove Gardens, managed by the King's Foundation, stand accused of creating what former staff describe as a toxic work environment. Picture this. Employees complained about being overworked with what they called trivial demands from the king himself, all while being underpaid and micromanaged to the point of suffocation. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't the first time Highgrove has ruffled some serious feathers in the gardening community. Royal author Tom Bower uncovered a telling encounter that seemingly confirms the crucial allegations made by former staffers. Sir Roy Strong, a respected art historian, writer and landscape designer, was summoned by Charles to Highgrove for his expertise on hedge cultivation. Now listen to this carefully, because it reveals everything about how our king operates. Sir Roy spent days working with his own gardener, perfecting ideas for the royal estate. At the end of this extensive consultation, he submitted his employee's bill for £1,000 and was never asked to return, never even thanked for his efforts. But wait, it gets worse. Strong had personally inscribed a copy of his gardening book to Charles as a thoughtful gesture, but that book was left abandoned in a waiting room rather than being honoured with a place in the Prince's library. Sir Roy's observation was brutally honest. He's shocked by the sight of an invoice, so he likes people who don't charge for their services. The report revealed that Sir Roy Strong wasn't an isolated incident. Charles allegedly developed a pattern of asking gardening experts for unpaid advice and, on numerous occasions, unpaid labour. Get this, around 20 artists were recruited to paint 2 or 3 flowers every day, and they were expected to do this for free. Can you imagine? Professional artists, with bills to pay and families to feed, being asked to donate their time and talent to one of the wealthiest families in the world. Some artists had the backbone to outright reject these demands, and rightfully so. Jonathan Heel, a talented woodcut artist, was expected to donate his work as a gift to the royal collection. Meanwhile, the late painter Lucian Freud had perhaps the most memorable response when Charles asked him to exchange artwork. Freud's reply was legendary. "I don't want one of your rotten paintings." You know, this situation reminds me of what Scripture teaches us about fair treatment of workers. In Deuteronomy 24:15 we read, "You shall give him his wages on his day before the sun sets, for he is poor and sets his heart on it, so that he will not cry against you to the Lord and it becomes sin in you." This ancient wisdom emphasizes the importance of paying workers fairly and promptly, something that seems to have been forgotten at Highgrove. The Sunday Times detailed the complaints from former staffers who discovered they were earning minimum wage while working for one of Britain's most privileged institutions. This revelation led directly to the mass exodus of experienced gardening staff. Think about it, these weren't just any employees. These were skilled horticulturists who had dedicated their expertise to maintaining one of Britain's most celebrated private gardens, only to discover they were being compensated at the absolute legal minimum while facing what they described as unreasonable demands and micromanagement. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for, and clearly paying minimum wage for specialised garden expertise was a recipe for disaster. This Highgrove drama raises serious questions about the royal approach to employment. When you're asking for free work from professional artists and paying gardening experts minimum wage while demanding perfection, you're creating an unsustainable model that ultimately backfires. The great business philosopher Peter Drucker once said, "Management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things." Based on these reports, it seems like there's been a significant leadership failure in how staff and consultants have been treated at Highgrove. Another piece of biblical wisdom comes to mind from 1 Timothy 5:18. For the scripture says, "You shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing," and "the labourer is worthy of his wages." This verse emphasizes that those who work deserve fair compensation, a principle that transcends religious boundaries and speaks to basic human dignity and fairness. The contrast couldn't be starker. Here we have a future king, now our current monarch, who lives in unimaginable luxury, yet appears to have created a culture where skilled professionals are expected to work for free or minimum wage while being subjected to demanding oversight. What makes this story particularly damaging is that it fits into a broader narrative about how the royal family treats the people who work for them. We've heard similar stories over the years about palace staff feeling undervalued and overworked. When respected figures like Sir Roy Strong and established artists like Lucian Freud are willing to go on record about their negative experiences, it suggests this isn't just about disgruntled employees, it's about a systematic approach to getting something for nothing. Maya Angelou wisely observed, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." The pattern of behaviour at Highgrove seems to be showing us something important about priorities and values. Let's not forget the human element here. 11 gardeners leaving their jobs isn't just a statistic. It represents 11 individuals who felt so undervalued and mistreated that they were willing to walk away from their livelihoods. These weren't people looking for an easy way out. Gardening, especially at the level required for a royal estate, requires years of training, expertise, and genuine passion for the craft. When professionals like this feel compelled to leave en masse, it speaks to serious underlying problems in management and culture. The famous leadership expert John Maxwell once said, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." Based on these reports, it seems like the leadership at Highgrove was showing the way to exploitation rather than excellence. So where does this leave King Charles and his beloved Highgrove estate? With only one gardener remaining out of the original 12, and a reputation for unfair treatment spreading through the professional gardening and art communities, some serious soul-searching and policy changes are clearly needed. The irony is thick here. Charles has long positioned himself as someone who cares deeply about environmental stewardship and sustainable practices, yet the way his own garden operation has treated its human resources appears to be anything but sustainable. As we wrap up today's episode, I think this Highgrove situation serves as a reminder that true leadership isn't about your title or your wealth, it's about how you treat the people who work with and for you. Whether you're a king or a small business owner, the principles remain the same. Treat people fairly, compensate them appropriately for their expertise, and create an environment where talent can flourish rather than flee. The question now is whether King Charles will learn from this expensive lesson and make the necessary changes to restore both his garden and his reputation as an employer. That's all for today's episode of Meghan and Harry Tales. If you enjoyed this deep dive into royal drama, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll be back next week with more stories from inside the palace walls. Until then, remember, even kings aren't above treating people with basic dignity and fair compensation. I'm Adrian, and thanks for joining me on another journey through the fascinating